I'm pretty confused about what's going on with the economy. I read that inflation is now 4% and will be going up to 5%, which is higher than I've known it for quite a while. And there's lots of other issues going on that I'm rather confused about. So what I thought is I'd invite a couple of experts on the economy to come on, which is a real treat for us all. One of whom has not been on the show before, Richard Murphy. Are you there, Richard?
I'm here, indeed. Good morning. Hello.
Thanks
for asking me.
Thank you for coming on. And also, who's just come into the room, we have who's come on the show before and is doing fantastic work in the House of Lords. Prem Sikka, are you there, Prem?
I am. Good morning, Crispin, and good morning, Richard, who's been a soulmate for years.
Great, it's great to have you both on here. Can you Richard? Can I start with you, because I don't understand how the economy can be seen as being at all healthy when we've got this inflation. The furloughs coming to an end. Obviously, there's going to be high in unemployment coming up, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And you've written about the forecast that the government's come out with and saying they put a big gloss on it. What is going to happen, do you think?
Well, I don't believe the view that Rishi Sunak was putting forward, that we are entering an era of optimism. Only in his rather distorted little imagination can that be true. There is no evidence that we are entering an era of optimism. Nor are we probably going to have the levels of unemployment that he claims, because we know that furlough is coming to an end, and we know that is going to have an impact on people's well-being. We know that COVID is not over as yet. Sorry, but the fact is that it's very obviously, that it isn't. We're running at levels of infection at January 2021 rates. It's highly likely we're going to have a pretty horrible winter with it, I'm afraid to say. The chance of more lockdowns is high. We don't know whether the government will be helping during those lockdowns for people who are impacted and companies who are impacted. And what is happening underneath all that chaos, which Rishi Sunak is pretending simply does not exist, is that we have got a supply chain problem. Now, what a supply chain problem means is that when you try to start a system again, with bits of it having been closed down, and effectively bits of it have been closed down for a while, then you get disorganization and some chaos. For example, ships and containers all turned out to be in the wrong place in the world, and therefore things didn't move. We also discovered that the increase in demand for gas was not anticipated. God knows why. That shows how efficient markets are, of course, doesn't it? I heard the comment earlier on that we need some central planning on this, and we clearly did, but we didn't get it. And so we're now in a situation where some critical supplies, including some food, let's be blunt, are not getting through. And whether we like it or not, in the area where I live, Brexit is having an impact upon that, because there is a shortage of workers in East Anglia, where I am. I was out on the fields yesterday, and there is undoubtedly a problem. So look, there are issues clearly underpinning this. Let me make 2 points. One is that I work with a number of other people. Prem is one I've worked with for a long time. Danny Blanchflower is another. He was the sole voice on the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee at the time of the 2008 crisis, who correctly said it was coming. I also forecast that crisis. And he did it by literally going to talk to ordinary people. In fact, Danny has a theory that we should do economics by walking about. And in fact, what he's shown is that ordinary people, people on this Zoom call, know better about what is going to happen in the economy than do economists, who always look at it through the lens of their models, their maths, their spreadsheets, and so on. If you actually ask ordinary people, then you discover that they're much better at predicting when there's going to be a downturn. Most people are now predicting a downturn in the US by the beginning of 2022, here maybe by late spring 2022. If I want to know what's happening in my local economy, I go and have a haircut. I simply ask my barber. He knows more about the local economy than anyone else I know, because he talks to more people. And that's what Danny does. He's quite sure that's going to happen. I'm quite convinced of it too. The second thing I think that we just need to look at is that when we come to inflation, this is not something to get too worried about. These are almost certainly short-term issues. Now, they're to worry about if they are not adjusted for in people's pay. yes, I accept that point entirely. I mean, right now I'm on a fixed contract for some work. If there's inflation, I'm going to lose out very badly. So I know what that feels like. We should be having the triple lock protection for pensioners. We should have the same, and Prem, I no doubt can talk about that because he's very interested in that issue, but we're not getting that. We should be protecting other people on benefits, which clearly we're not. Universal credit has been knocked, despite what the government has claimed this week. And we need, obviously, to have protection for people on lower pay, and the minimum wage is not going to help that in very many people, because for the £1,000 increase that the minimum wage is going to deliver, a significant part, well over half, will go back either in tax or in universal credit rebates. So we're not seeing the protection there. So we need really strong demands to protect people against that. But thankfully, there is no sign that this need last in the long term. And that's recognised by the Bank of England, the Treasury, the Office for Budget Responsibility, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. So most people think inflation is not here to stay. If anything, my suspicion is that we have a long-term problem with deflation, not a problem with inflation. But that will not solve our real problems, and that is we have had a budget that does nothing for inequality. It does hit people on low pay. It didn't raise taxes on the wealthy. It did give corporation tax cuts to banks. It didn't mention climate. It basically allowed everything to trickle up. We don't know how we're going to see the investment that we need in the economy. We're not getting a Green New Deal. We are in trouble.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Prem, you've been busy in the House of Lords in the past week trying to stop this triple lock pension being taken away. How much impact do you think that will have if they decide to vote that through?
Well, I'm hoping to force a vote on Tuesday. If I may put in a plea to the listeners and viewers to this, if they can please write to any peer urging them to support my amendment, which is really that we need to increase pensions in line with earnings, that is 8.3%, and not 3.1%. 3.1% is a backward-looking measure. This is inflation in the past. The current position is that the energy cap has already gone up by, I think it's 12%, set to go up by about 30% possibly in spring. Food prices are rising. In other words, the pensioners would be in a negative income territory. So we need to deal with that. When I spoke in the Lords last week, a number of Lib Dem peers also joined in. Some Tories were also critical of the government, so one felt something was changing. But regrettably, Labour front bench has not been supportive. It's really been non-committal. In the Commons, it did not oppose the suspension after triple lock, though it moaned about it and suggested some tinkering at the edges. I'm afraid I don't tinker at the edges. I want to go to the heart of it and say no to the suspension of triple lock. Government says it is temporary. That is wrong, because its effects are not temporary. A low pension means you have a low base to start in the future. So, and you know, in the 80s, Thatcher eliminated a link between pensions and earnings. We never ever recovered that amount. Now, so I'm hoping everybody can help me out. There is nothing actually in the budget for pensioners. Word women only appears once in Rishi Sunak's speech, and there is nothing about reducing the gender pay gap or offering anything for childcare. There's nothing in the pension for the disabled. For ordinary households, there are huge cuts in their purchasing power. And one analysis suggests that by the mid-20s, an average worker would be losing equivalent to about £13,000 of earnings because of freezes and the rises in various taxes. And the government has been crowing. And again, yesterday I was speaking to some Conservatives, and they're saying, oh, the local council funding is going to go up, which is not really true in a sense. Government's offered 4.8 billion over the next 3 years to local councils. That amounts to 1.6%, 1.6 billion a year, which is roughly an increase of 3% in core funding. But that is going to be wiped out by inflation easily. And so basically councils would be under pressure to hugely increase council taxes. But the government then says, well, you're basing base increase in council taxes just 2%, which means they will have to introduce more cuts. And some councillors I was speaking to on Tuesday last week, they were saying there is nothing left to cut. Now, can I just draw your attention, and this connects with what Richard said, about the supply chain problems. This is a comment from the Office of Budget Responsibility, which goes through the government's forecast. And this is that supply bottlenecks have been exacerbated by changes in the migration and trading regimes following Brexit. Energy prices have soared, labor shortages have emerged in some occupations, and there have been blockages in some supply chains. These can be expected to hold back output growth. In other words, the Treasury's own watchdog thinks the government is on a wrong track. Its policies won't deliver what it says. Now, the magic policy the government has introduced is the free ports. Okay, and let us again look at what this Treasury watchdog has to say about free ports. In case anybody is not sure, free ports are essentially economic zones where normal customs duty, VAT, tax, national insurance, and business rates do not apply. And the government is handing out lots and lots of sweeteners to businesses to move to these zones. So the OBR said, and I quote, there is also broader uncertainty around how much of the economic activity that takes place within a free port will have been displaced from other UK regions, and how much is genuinely additional. In other words, it is a failed policy. So two key things the government is facing: how to revive the economy, how to address the bottlenecks. And the Treasury's own watchdog says, well, actually, the government hasn't really got a clue. And it is interesting, most of the media has not really picked this up. Richard and I, being avid readers of Treasury documents, we read the small print, and I certainly picked this up. And it does not really inspire any confidence. And I really think we need a severe public backlash. And hopefully people in this program will help to engineer that, because people are being fed a lot of lies out there.
Wow. Richard, have you got anything to add to? I mean, the OBR thing you mentioned in an article you wrote, that the OBR is not at all independent of the government anyway. And if the non-independent OBR is critical of the government, then we are in a mess, aren't we?
Look, the Office for Budget Responsibility was created by George Osborne to basically tell George Osborne that his numbers were right. We know that this year the OBR agreed to Rishi Sunak's request to use the wrong budget predictions for the economy as a whole, so that next year it can look as though the economy will be doing better than expected. That was Rishi Sunak's hope. So he can give a pre-budget giveaway to boost Tory re-election chances, and they agreed. I've been in the Treasury quite a number of times. I know where the Office for Budget Responsibility is. It's about 2 doors down from the Chancellor's office. That isn't exactly what you would expect of an independent office. They can nip in and out and talk to each other any day they like, all day if they like. So this is not an independent organisation. It's no more independent than the Bank of England is, which is undoubtedly going to put up interest rates because the Chancellor has told them to. So another hit for people who've got mortgages. It's bound to come through. It's going to hit the people who are in debt. And who are the people in debt? Well, the people who haven't got as much wealth as those who own the debt. Remember, for every debt, there is somebody who owns it as well as somebody who gives it out. And the people who own the debt are, well, wealthy at the end of the day. So we are talking about a situation where the OBR are joining with the Chancellor in delivering forecasts that are wrong. I did actually put up a chart this week, which actually came from one of the OBR's own analyses of its own budget prediction capacity. And they showed that every single forecast they've made in some areas were wildly optimistic. They are now. They're talking about there's going to be growth. They talk about the government's going to balance its books. They always say that. And it's always wrong because they always assume that everything will go back to normal. What's normal in their book? Well, the nice, comfortable world which they want to live in, not the real world that we actually need to have, where actually we don't need to balance the budget. We should be spending government funds, which it can create, to deliver full employment. And if you're interested, look at my blog this morning, the Tax Research UK blog. I put up a piece from 1944, written by William Beveridge, when the whole idea of full employment as a government goal was coming into mind. That was the foundation of the post-war Labour government. And what he says is, any government where there is not full employment can create the money to spend to deliver full employment and always be better off as a result. That's the type of logic that we need Labour to adopt. We're not getting that. We're not getting that from the Office for Budget Responsibility. We're not getting that from the Bank of England. We need to keep saying there's one goal that we need in our economy. It's full employment. If everybody is working on a decent wage, we can afford to pay for all the public services we want from now and forever.
Well, thank you very much for that. I just wanted to show a video for if you could have a look at this and comment on this for me, Prem, because you said something about Labour's front bench, and I think it's quite interesting what we see in this video. This was just before the budget.
Yeah, you'd reinstate the universal credit as well. You'd the £1,000, would you?
Well, we opposed the cut to universal credit, the £20 cut, which the government brought in. And what we're saying, well, can I just finish the numbers I was putting forward?
I mean, you're telling me all the things the government's not going to do. I can interview the government on my own. Thank you. I just want to know what you are going to do. What you would do.
Okay, this number is really important. We've opposed the cut to universal credit. We don't believe that the jobs tax is right. We think that's wrong because that's going to hit people and businesses. And we said that the personal allowance freeze was wrong as well. And if you take all of those together, even despite what the government is saying about the national minimum wage, it means that someone earning the national minimum wage being hit by those tax increases would be £800 a year worse off.
Okay, but what would Labour do? That's my question to you. I can interview the Conservatives, as I said, till the cows come home. £10 an hour national minimum wage and reinstating universal credit. That's what you would do if you were in power right now.
But as I said, we have said we would have a £10.
It's fine.
I've been really clear to say that we would have a £10 national minimum wage
and universal credit. Would you reinstate it, even though it would cost £6 billion a year? Where would that money come from?
We have opposed the cut to universal credit. We have opposed the jobs tax, which is coming in, and we have said that the personal allowance freeze is wrong. It's really important to be clear about this.
Where would the money come from to pay for it?
It's really, look, Kate, it's really important to be clear about this, that these changes,
yeah, well, that's what I'm asking you to be clear, because it's not clear to me at the moment. Where would the money come from?
We need to make sure that we are growing the economy, that we are taxing fairly, and that we are spending wisely.
Well, I think we've heard enough of. I think we've heard quite enough of that. Prem, I just wanted to ask you, when I saw that clip, I thought, why can't he answer the question about where the money would come from? What is the problem? You listed about 7 or 8 different ways that money could be raised fairly the other week, and he's not able to. Why do you think people are worried about mentioning where money comes from?
I have no idea. I can't defend the indefensible. Especially when lots of alternatives have been outlined over the years. And Richard and I have argued over many years that actually UK currency is a major currency. Governments can print or create, if you like, unlimited amounts of money to create any kind of society they want. And if that money creation is inflationary, then they can decide to remove some of the money from the richest. Through progressive taxation. And that is why if that kind of argument does not carry much traction at Westminster, then we can talk in the simple terms and say, look, if you eliminated the low tax rates on capital gains and treated it the same way as earned income, the way we pay taxes through PAYE and so on, that would raise £17 billion a year more, plus another £8 billion in national insurance. You can apply the same to dividends, that raises £6 billion. You can insure all of the national insurances, earned income is taxed at the 12% rate, which applies to national insurance contributions. That would raise 14 billion. And we also had discussions now about wealth tax, and vast amounts can be raised there, also through the financial transaction tax. None of these proposals add anything to the 20% rate of income tax, or the 40%, or increase national insurance contributions for the masses. So I went to the PLP last Monday, the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, where Rachel Reeves was speaking just ahead of the budget. And I stood up and asked a question. I said, what are you going to do to reduce the tax burden on the poorest 10%, who pay around about 47% or so of their total income in direct and indirect taxes, compared to the richest? I think they pay about 33.5%. That's the richest 10%. And I also said, look, there are alternative ways of raising the tax revenues which reduce inequalities. Well, I'm afraid I didn't even get one word answer, not one word to say what is going to be done. And at previous meetings, I have outlined some of these alternative tax measures. And again, I got no answer. I actually wrote to Keir Starmer on 25th July about it. In writing, I sent my proposals. And being a backbench fodder, I have received no reply. Maybe that is the way the leadership treats the backbenchers who dare to think differently. I do not know. So Labour leadership knows what the alternatives are. All I can assume is that somehow there is some kind of a financial dogma, and they're subscribed to that, and they're prisoners of the city to say, well, you know, the city wants this and that is what we will deliver. But I think people sooner or later have to pass a judgment on that, and I fear that that judgment will not be very favourable to Labour.
Wow, that's so incredible that you've put the case to them so much, and then he comes on the telly and he can't answer a simple question. I mean, if you were there, it would have been a doddle.